Good morning. It is still morning for another half hour. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Fox Valley Voice. My name is Jaime Gutierrez, and I am your host. And very, very excited to welcome as my co-host today in the studio, Commander Kristen Ziman of the Aurora Police Department. Hello, Commander.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
So, the Fox Valley Voice, we like to talk to local people about local things, and you are very local.
Very local.
And very vocal.
Yeah, that I am.
I just came up with
a curse.
So thank you to those who are watching and listening live on YouTube. You can interact with us. You can either leave a comment underneath the video right there on YouTube, or you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Fox Valley Voice. And we encourage you to submit your questions and comments for us there. Oh gosh, where do we start?
We could start with the stolen stop sign that's on the wall in the background.
Okay. So thank you so
Not
much.
Not lost on me. I'll wait till the show's over, though.
Okay.
You don't have to explain.
No, I am going to explain. That was actually taken from a frat house at a college, so it was already stolen.
I'm a little out of jurisdiction anyway, and it's my day off, so.
Okay, good. Yes.
No, do you see how I notice those things, though? Yeah.
You know what? I can't even imagine, because even when you're off duty, you probably just pick up on stuff. And
it's been a few years as being a police officer, so yeah. Those observation skills are sharpened.
Well, speaking of, you celebrated your 20th year.
I did,
with
yes,
the Aurora Police Department.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 23 years total. I started as a cadet, so literally right out of high school. So I've grown up in the police department.
Oh gosh, so does it seem like that long? Or?
No, blink. It feels like it's a blink and 20 years goes by.
Okay. Care to share any highlights with us? I know it's a long time, and you probably have thousands of stories.
You know what? The highlights are honestly just every day I love my job even more, and every position that I'm fortunate enough to be in, I love it even more than I ever thought I could. So,
wow.
Highlights. Gosh, I could keep you here all day about the interesting, both funny, sad, and all. It just runs the gamut of emotion. But there's certainly a film reel there.
Well, this is a show about stories, so please, if you feel a story coming on, just feel free.
Don't fight the urge.
Yeah,
okay.
Launch right into
All
it,
right.
Because stories are what sticks with people.
Mm-hmm.
So if we need to make a point, I'm sure that you'll be able to help us out with a story or two. So being a police officer, and you've risen through the ranks over the years, and congratulations to you for that.
Thank
you. I enjoy talking to people who are in that kind of a position where they are doing what they love. Mm-hmm. I'm sure it's not easy. Just because you say you love your job more and more every day, but that doesn't mean that it's a walk in the park, I'm sure.
Oh, sure, yeah.
It's something special, and I think it's unusual to talk to somebody who is in that kind of a position. Mm-hmm. It seems like many of us are in jobs that we would rather not be in. Mm-hmm. But so I really enjoy talking to people who are at that level where you're just excelling and succeeding and just continuing to learn and grow and prosper. So.
Absolutely, and I think that's what it's all about. There's a thing called being in flow, where you lose sense of time, where that thing that you're doing is neither too easy nor so stressful and challenging that it becomes unhealthy. And so I think that's what we have to find that sweet spot in our life. And if we're fortunate enough to find that position of being in flow and then get paid,
mm-hmm.
And make a living at it, I think that's where the fortunate people are, because most of the time, as you said, people are just trying to chase that. They work so they can do what they love. And so I think that being able to combine the two, I'm very fortunate.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So I started following you back in the day when you were LTKZ.
Wow, one of the originals. That's fantastic.
And I felt that it was really unusual, but it was kind of a breath of fresh air to actually get the inside scoop from somebody in an organization that is typically not just the Aurora Police Department, but just police in general.
Sure.
Not always that approachable or open. So tell me a little bit about your development as you're an unofficial spokesperson.
Absolutely.
For the Aurora Police Department.
Well,
so.
I mean, I can take you back even further, and the what we do is adapt in life, and it's human nature. And so this personality that I was fortunate enough to develop over the years with two great parents who allowed me to be very passionate, very colorful, and outgoing, and they didn't stifle me. So when I got into police work, I found just the opposite, is that, we're very, we're militaristic and paramilitaristic, and I had to adapt to fit in. And so the minute that I stepped foot in that police department, like most of us do, you look to not stand out too much, and especially being a female, I thought, well, I just need to blend in. I need to be one of the guys. And so I started to do that. And in that, I lost myself for a few years. And I developed what I call that street personality. So it's this, I put the uniform on, and I was trying to be someone I wasn't. I was trying to, just as you described, and sometimes, and I say this lovingly, but people sometimes describe police officer as, mirrored sunglasses and attitude. And that's what I learned when I came on, and it was in 1991. And so I was trying to emulate those around me. And I learned very quickly that it didn't work for me. And I'll tell you, the minute that I learned it, it was on a foot pursuit. I pulled this guy over on a traffic stop, and he ran from me, and it was just me. I was by myself, and this was just a couple years on. So I was, I was relatively new, probably 3 years on. And so we're running through the yards. Now this guy is, he's huge, and he gets bigger every time I tell the story.
Kind of like a fish story.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But so he took off. He had warrants, and so as I'm running, and I thought, what am I going to do when I catch this guy? I mean, look at me. I'm, relatively small in stature. And so I thought, I don't really have a plan. But see, I was fast. I wasn't super tough, but I was fast. So I would always close in on the bad guy. And so as I'm closing the gap, I thought, I have to have a plan here. The plan was, I'm going to just pounce as soon as I, get close enough. So I closed that gap, and, in my best Tigger fashion, I jumped, and I thought, I'm going to tackle him and handcuff him. It's going to be the end. Well, he didn't fall. So the interesting part, though, that one could not have predicted is that he just continued to run with me on his back. I didn't let go, unbeknownst to me at the time or even now. So I'm running with this guy, and I'm thinking, this is it. I'm in the backyards. Dispatch is calling me, asking where I'm at. I have no idea, so I'm not answering them. And I started formulating this plan, and that was just to try to talk to him. So I said, hey, look, here's the deal. You just have to stop, and then I'll handcuff you, and I won't arrest you for fleeing, but we'll take care of those warrants because it was inevitable that you were going to get caught anyway. And I said, and we'll call it a day. I said, because you're not going to gain any street cred by beating up a small police officer, and I'm not going to get any reputation credibility with my peers. And so I said, let's just agree that we'll just stop this. And he stopped. Crazy. And it was funny because as we're walking, I handcuffed him, and I said, why did you stop? And he said, nobody's ever talked to me. No one has ever had a conversation with me. And this guy, he was a bad guy. I mean, it was, cops and robbers. But we talked the entire way. In fact, my radio had actually bounced out of my belt, my holder. And he's like, you dropped your radio back there. So he showed me where I dropped it. And we had this conversation, and for me in that moment, it was bigger. It was about respect, and it was about being myself. And I thought this thing that I was doing wasn't working for me, acting like other police officers were, or actually even what I thought the police officers were supposed to behave or how they were. And, this attitude and, macho and it just didn't work for me. And so it was in that moment that I changed everything, and I actually started becoming myself. I started bringing my humor, my compassion, my creativity. And it was then that I started loving my job, and I started loving the people that I interacted with, even the people that broke the law, because I thought, we have this mutual respect. And when you give someone respect, the natural consequence is that they show you respect back. It's low-hanging fruit. I don't know why people sometimes can't grasp it.
Yeah.
So, just to finish that thought process. So then as I rose through the ranks, I again, it's very unorthodox. People look at me and they think you're a police officer. You don't act like a police officer. And so my pushback is, how are we supposed to act? But I started to write as a sergeant. I went to my lieutenant and I said, do you mind if I start a column for, ask the Beacon if they would want a police officer to have it was supposed to be a question and answer kind of thing, ask the police officer. And so that actually evolved into a column because someone, his name is Jeff Ward, he was a columnist for the Beacon, and he challenged me in a horrible way. He wrote this scathing email to me, and I adore him to this day because I wrote back, and then we thus started this exchange between the two of us. So that's how my column was born, and I wanted to start to tackle complicated issues, things that people really didn't understand about policing, and I tried to bridge the gap. Well, then I got a Facebook presence, and I was chastised for that a little because people thought, you shouldn't be on Facebook, you shouldn't be posting things, and I thought, why not?
Who's doing the chastising?
Just in general, rumblings of, if you're
within the department?
Yes.
Okay.
So at that time, I was a lieutenant, I believe, and so it was this presence, and social media. I'm addicted to it: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I mean, I'm all over it, and I like that presence because I can put good stories out there. It started as a way to share my columns. But then, I started sharing more of myself, and I found the more I shared of myself, again, authentic, the more I was me, the better response I got. And so the chastising came from just that is you put yourself out there too much, and you're a police officer, and police officers are very private, and a lot of times for good reason, because there have been many instances of people getting followed home and, just horrible things like that. But I guess I just I take that risk. But that's you asked how that came about, but it's just because from that lesson early on in my career, I decided I'm always going to be me. This is it. Take it or leave it. It's how I deal with people on the street. It's how I deal with citizens, my colleagues. I mean, people I work for, people I work with, and it's just, it continues to work for me because I just feel like, I guess I challenge people that say they're a different person at home that they are at work, because for me, I'd push back and say, well, it must be exhausting to try to remember who to be based on where you are. So I'm just trying to bring that authenticity, and I think the more authentic you are, the more successful you can be.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like there are other members of the department that have started to head in that direction in terms of being themselves?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that I used to believe that this was more gender specific, as to females. And as I was talking with males, I say, you talk about authenticity and how you tried to fit in. They said, this happens to us too. And they've challenged me and said, we think that you females have it easier because you're different and you're the minority in our profession. And so you tend to communicate differently. So you are different. We as men feel like we have to put this face on and not be authentic. And when they said that, these men challenged me, I thought, you're so right. It never occurred to me that men suffer from the same affliction, And so, yes, I believe that the more, and that's in leadership, that starts in an organization, and it's the personality of the organization. And I feel like when you allow people to bring themselves into their work, then it's a force multiplier. It's the more that they are authentic, the better that they deal with people, and the happier they are. And then production is a natural consequence, and well-being is a natural consequence. How can that be wrong? When you're, again, forced not to be something different.
Yeah. But there's always that stereotype, of the police having to put up this big presence, having to establish authority, and
Absolutely.
so it's got to be tough to balance that.
It is,
because you don't want to be seen as a pushover.
Absolutely not. In fact, when you look at our force continuum of which we are trained, the first step on the force continuum is presence, is that command presence, and a lot of time order is restored just with the presence of a police officer, or even there mayhem does not occur because there is a presence, and so there is something to that, and so it's a fine balance that you really have to hone that skill, and it's a challenge for sure.
Mm-hmm. We do want to reiterate to those who are watching and listening that Commander Ziman is off duty right now, so we don't want to get any emails or phone calls about her being here on the taxpayers' dime.
I'm on vacation. Yes.
But she did offer to arrive in full uniform, mm-hmm. and I said absolutely not. I do not want to be responsible for making anyone dress up on their day off.
I'm so relieved when you said that.
But we do appreciate you taking some time out. How was now we are recording this in between Christmas and New Year's, so I hope you had a great Christmas holiday.
Santa was very good.
What did you get for Christmas?
I got a pair of Uggs slippers. That was my favorite gift. Is that crazy? I got a pair of Ugg slippers.
The fuzzy boots?
The fuzzy, yeah. Well, the slippers.
They're slippers.
Yeah, slippers. But I'm so excited about those slippers.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That was my best gift. Yeah.
Excellent. So holidays are typically a time of increased presence, mm-hmm. Due to the celebrations and parties and things going on, mm-hmm. especially now coming up here in a couple of days with New Year's Eve.
Yes.
So what special things does the department have to do in order to prepare for a night like New Year's Eve?
Manpower is our biggest, the threshold, and so we have to make sure that we have plenty of people on staff, and just for the sheer volume, and you get a lot of people that like to light fireworks off, or even sometimes shoot guns in the air as a form of celebration. So we highly discourage that. If anyone's listening that's loading their weapon or trying to purchase fireworks, just say Happy New Year and blow a horn like the rest of the world.
Does Aurora have a shot spotter?
We do not. No, actually, we do not.
Okay. That's just some of the technology that I've read about mm-hmm. over the years that some departments have, where they'll actually be able to use technology to indicate the discharge of a weapon.
Yes, we looked at it for a long time, and I was one of the ones that researched it, and I just wasn't quite ready because it seemed like there were still some bugs that needed to be worked out with just that. Sometimes it would pick up fireworks or loud noises that would be mistaken for gunfire, and so I wanted to get those bugs worked out before mm-hmm. We actually implemented it, but we currently do not have it, no.
Okay. So am I right in assuming that New Year's Eve is one of the dates that is probably the highest activity in the calendar year for the police?
Yeah, it's one of them. 4th of July and New Year's Eve, and that's twofold, because you have people out late, and then you have people who are partaking in adult beverages that decide to get behind the wheel of a car. So we have increased presence out for that reason as well. And so it's a multitude of just a potpourri of bad things. Yeah.
Well, I wish you and the department best of luck on New Year's Eve.
Thank you.
Hopefully
I will
not
leave that
too many.
I don't work on New Year's Eve, so I leave that to the boots on the street. So yes, send your energy to them. They certainly deserve it.
All right, go get them, guys. This year, I kind of put a little bit in the description for the show here today, especially the second half of 2014 has been a very interesting in terms of the relationship between police and the citizens.
Absolutely. Devastating. Heartbreaking.
I mean,
all of the above.
There's always been, there's always been a bit of, continuing ongoing tension in terms of, justifiable use of force, mm-hmm. or, on the other side of the coin, officers of the law being targeted. Mm-hmm. But for whatever reason, just here in the past 6 months, it's really intensified.
Absolutely.
So, and I know that you've written a couple of columns about what has happened in specifically in Ferguson, Missouri. Mm-hmm. So, and I wrote that, some of these issues cause a lot of confusion just for me personally. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I wouldn't really even consider myself part of the population that has any problem mm-hmm. with the police, you mm-hmm. know.
Aside from your stolen stop sign.
Yeah. I can give you the name of the person who actually stole that if you need it. But I just I wonder if you and I could talk a little bit about what your thoughts are on these specific instances here this year, and what are we to make of it? Because so I understand how people are upset mm-hmm. To the point of demonstration mm-hmm. about the police tactics and how they handle certain situations. But, I also see that the police need to protect themselves mm-hmm. and, they don't have a whole lot of time to make certain decisions mm-hmm. that result in, severe consequences. Mm-hmm. So as a confused citizen, mm-hmm. What would you tell me in terms of how to, what to think about what's happened in Missouri and in New York City, mm-hmm. And then even more tragic was the fact that 2 New York City police officers were targeted, mm-hmm. and it was specifically due to the fact that the assailant was wanting to get some kind of mm-hmm. revenge for the other 2 incidents. So now this is a whole big thing now.
Sure.
So anyway, what do we make of all this?
Yeah. Well, when Ferguson occurred, I decided to do what most people didn't, and that was to sit back and wait until information came in. And that is the one thing that, the media, I love the media. I mean, it's a great venue for us to get the word out. It's also, a presence that sometimes can put things out before the actual story. And, you put a microphone in people's faces, and then thus that story is born, and it takes on a life of its own. So a lot of people were asking, what do you think? And I said, I'd like to wait for the facts to come out, because that is the one thing that I've learned over the years as a police officer, and especially now, I oversee the investigations division, and the one thing that people really need to understand is that that the facts unfold, and to take something at face value right away is never a good idea. There's always something that kind of takes you in another turn, whether it be a witness that comes forward or video that surfaces. And so I like to wait before I weigh in on it, and I was glad I was able to do that. I'll tell you, when I as the facts, came out, and especially from, the grand jury and the transcripts, I did read through them, and I struggle with the whole concept, because I know what it's like to be out there and to be threatened and to have a split second to make a decision. And I know that is, that's kind of been a common theme, but you really, truly do not know what that's like unless you experience it. And I was a COP officer, community-oriented policing officer, and I helped with the Citizens Police Academy for a couple of years. And so we have civilians come in and they go through this academy. And one of the things that we did is we put them through this system. It's like a video game almost, but it's like a 360, and it's called the FAT system. And you have to, we give them a fake gun, and then the video is all around them. And in a second, a door opens, and you'd be surprised how many people shot babies. And, I'm like, you just killed that woman's baby. And and where somebody holds up a wallet or a cell phone, and I'm like, you just shot that. And so you truly, unless you experience it, and that's not a defense. I'm just bear with me here. I'm trying to give you, all the angles and all of the things that maybe people don't understand. Now, having said that, we're trained to do that. That's what our training is in the academy. That's what our ongoing training is, and throughout our careers, is that we're trained to make those decisions. The problem is that we're humans. We're not robots, and so to have someone hold a hand up or when in this unarmed concept has been such a struggle for me, because again, police officers are killed by those who take their guns, and that is what I believe happened, or at least what all the evidence suggests at the onset of that encounter in Ferguson. And so I believe that he absolutely tried to disarm that police officer. What happened after that, I won't comment on, because I can only go by what the police officer says, and the witnesses are, you see it, it's polar opposite. He had his hands up. No, he didn't. He was, he's running away. No, he wasn't. It's incredible what the human mind does when you witness something. And I've seen it and experienced it where, two people can watch the exact same incident and come away with an entirely different viewpoint of it. So, it's complicated. And, I do believe that, he did the right thing at the onset. You don't, let a guy go. You need to chase them. That's what we do. That's why we are who we are. We're the guardians of democracy. This is what we do. So everyone else can be safe, because we run towards those people, So I struggle, because when we make a mistake, it's not the same kind of mistake. And I said this in my column, is that now that I'm a commander, I sit in my office, and if I make a mistake, it's usually a policy mistake, or it's usually a personnel issue. And I can literally walk down the hallway and go, oh, I need to right that wrong. When you're on the street and you have a weapon and you're a police officer and you make a mistake, this isn't like a mistake that most of us, the rest of us, can make in our jobs, and where we can right that wrong. It's a fatal mistake, which means that, you've literally eradicated a life, from existence. How do you explain that, And I know police officers who have taken lives, and I know how heavily it weighs upon them. And these are justified, shootings, and I know the struggle that they go through. So it's this dichotomy, this inner struggle for me, because I know what it's like to be a police officer, and yet I know there are cops out there that get it wrong. And do I think that police officers should be held to a higher standard? Absolutely. Absolutely. When you are entrusted to enforce the laws of this land, you had better follow the laws of this land. I truly I've gotten in arguments with police officers. For example, a domestic battery. If a police officer commits a domestic battery, or an order protection is placed upon them, their weapon is taken away, which renders them unable to perform their duties. So a police officer said to me, that's not fair. If an electrician or a plumber has this happen to them, they can still work. It's not fair. I said, well, then there's the door. Go enter another profession, but you have to be held to a higher standard. To me, that's simple. And if you're not up for that challenge or that responsibility, then don't come into this profession. And I'll tell you what, this is why it was heartbreaking for me, is because police are being attacked when, the majority of police officers are out there, putting their lives in danger for people they don't even know. And so this attack on police officers in general being painted with such a broad brush, it really is. I can describe it in no other way, in that it just breaks my heart, because I know these people. I stand shoulder to shoulder with them, and I know that they run towards the gunfire, that they would, I've watched them save lives. I've watched them do a multitude of things that are altruistic, and and it's the struggle for me. But when a cop gets it wrong, it is a black eye. It is the tarnish on the badge of all of us. And I'll tell you what, I mean, it's just like in any other profession. There are some bad apples. And I don't lose sleep over the people that we have fired for excessive force, where it has been a willful and wanton display of excessive force. I don't lose sleep over that, because you have violated public trust. And when public trust erodes, you are left with nothing. And so I really think that we have to hold police officers accountable, just as we have to hold the public accountable. So, so I'm kind of all over the place with this. Now, what do I personally think about Ferguson? Again, I can comment on the first part of it, but I wasn't there for the second part. In New York, I'll say quite blatantly, that officer should have been punished, should be punished. I don't think that chokehold, and now we've got evidence that has come out, that suggests that that's not what the cause of death was. It still looked terrible, and I still don't agree with it. So I think sometimes we as police officers have, this connotation of the thin blue line, right? And as a civilian, you might look at that and say that we stand together no matter what. Mm-hmm. And that's blind loyalty. And I don't believe in blind loyalty. I think that you stand with people when they are right, and you part with them when they are wrong. And you have to be able to look inward at your own profession and make that determination. And we do that here in Aurora. I'm proud. I am so proud of the reputation in Aurora. I have watched police officers exercise such restraint where they maybe even were justified in moving up that level of force. I'm proud of it. Could someone make a mistake? Could we become the next Ferguson? That's been asked of me. Absolutely, because someone could make a fatal mistake. I do think that the community, though, the personality of the community matters. And I know that our chief meets with the heads of churches and, of all different walks of life in our community. He does a great job of outreach, and we all try to do that. And we have almost 300 police officers sworn in our city, and I tell each of those officers that that's a commercial. That's 300 commercials, mm-hmm. For the police department, and even when we're arresting someone, you can still do it in a way that's respectful. So it's heartbreaking that the entire law enforcement community is having to endure this. And of course, now, I mean, it's just with officers being targeted. And by the way, we get a lot of bulletins. That's not the first. That's just there's been a lot that have been thwarted, and so it's a full-on war against police officers that, again, most are trying to do the right thing and always mm-hmm. have.
Mm-hmm. What kind of response have you received from some of the people in Aurora after Ferguson and after New York City? Well,
the first thing that I did was look at our calls for service when the grand jury indictment came out, when the news of it, and then I called the department and asked what's it like on the streets right now, and there was nothing. There have been peaceful protests. There was a protest that we held, and that was actually just as a result of a recent homicide that we had in our city. But we've had no pushback from the community, as it were. I know there's a lot of voices out there, a lot of unrest, but it's only been verbal, and a lot of questions being asked, much like yourself. I'm curious, I struggle, and that's the way it should be. There should be constant questions. There should be accountability. People should be asking us, could we be the next Ferguson, and how can we prevent that? That's the questions that we need to have with one another, and we need to know our community. And I think that was one of the problems in Ferguson, is that community was divided before this even happened. So when you do the work on the onset, and we do such great work, and by we I mean our police officers who are on the street connecting with people. They do such great work. Our community-oriented policing unit is out there doing great things, not just police work, by the way. I mean, they're out there, mm-hmm. working, the food pantry. They're out there giving presents to people. They're doing such work with outreach. And when you build relationships in the community, then, I call it the emotional bank account. When something does go wrong, then you've filled up that emotional bank account, and so there may be a deficit, but you're never gonna drain it completely. And we've been very fortunate to build those relationships within our community, and I'm so proud of Aurora for that.
One of the topics that has kind of been escalated since these incidents has been the suggestion that police officers be made to wear video recording devices. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about that?
I actually, and I'm speaking for Kristen Ziman here, not for, I don't know as far as policy what's going to occur with that. I support it. I will tell you when I've been fortunate enough. Again, it's like I haven't been on long enough to get to use the phrase back in my day, not quite yet, but I have been there long enough to see some transitions occur. One of which was mobile data computers coming in the squad cars, and you would not police officers. There's only two things police officers hate, and that is change and the status quo. So. Yeah. So we're quite an interesting bunch. We can be complex. And so, I give you these examples to make my point here, but, we had mobile data computers come in where so officers would go from writing paper reports to writing, digital reports. Mm-hmm. And the just the backlash from having to change into that was horrific. And so then, once that change occurred, then we moved on to putting, cameras in the cars. So we've had cameras in our cars for many years, along with microphones. And going into that was also very difficult, as you can imagine, the pushback. And so what people ultimately realized, and what I realized, so I was a sergeant at this time when cameras came into play. So people would come in to complain about a police officer, perhaps on a traffic stop or during an interaction. And the first thing I would do was go pull that video. And it was amazing how many officers were exonerated based on the video. And there were a few times where I played that video for a citizen who accused an officer of excessive force or, being rude or whatnot. And I would play the video back. And they would get up and leave because it was false. It was completely false. So there is a lot of that too that officers have to contend with, as the false accusations. And so these cameras have exonerated more police officers than they've hurt. Now there have been times that we've fired officers, we've held them accountable. Because of the things that we have found on the video. So that's the way it should be. To me, it's a check and balance. I will say that the video doesn't always tell the full story, though, because there's sometimes a lot of leading up to the video where you only see, and people will say a video is worth, a million words if a photo is worth 1,000. But there's sometimes, you don't see the leading up. And, I will say, like in the, let's use New York as an example. When you have a use of force, when an officer has to use force, it's never going to look pretty. The public is not going to like it. When a person actively resists arrest, it's not a ballet. I mean, the fight is typically on, and so there's nothing good about it. And so I think when people see it, it's always sometimes a lot worse. And I really do subscribe to the fact that nothing is as good as it seems or as bad as it seems. So we just have to keep that in mind, that there's so much more involved in it. But I support it. I support cameras, and I think that it makes officers' jobs more difficult, but that's okay. Again, that kind of goes with that responsibility, accountability, and I do sometimes think of the officers and the challenge, because I didn't have to work in the times of the video cameras. Again, I was, as a supervisor at that time, but it changes the way that, that you talk to people, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think that, having it on camera it really does. I think it helps officers more than it hurts them, without a doubt.
But there's going to be some pushback.
Sure. You know what? And I have a feeling that our hand will be forced. I mean, you see that at the federal level, they're, looking for funding to, outfit officers, all law enforcement with body cams. And, again, I really do. I think it helps more than it hurts. And I think if, in that instance in Ferguson, I think that people may have, just like a couple people have done in my office, and got up and walked out when they actually saw what happened. And, I think it will help.
Mm-hmm. We have a couple people who are listening and watching, chiming in, wanting to say hi to the commander. Marissa Amoni of Downtown Aurora Magazine is out there. She loves your blog and wants to know, what kind of feedback did you get from your article on Ferguson? Now, I saw that you released some numbers as far as the number of views that article got. So tell us about that one.
Well, I'm a small-time blogger, so when I wrote that Ferguson post, and again, it was people were wanting to know what I thought, and it felt like such pressure. And what I sometimes do when I writing is that second passion I have, and I really had to sit down and that's where I really, when my thoughts come out, by writing, that's when I really sort out how I feel about something. And so as I sat down and I just looked at that screen, I thought, how do I feel about this? People are wanting to know. And that's how it came out. And, very little editing on that one. And it's just as I've described to you, that's what my blog was about. The feedback was tremendous. And I think that, there was, again, it's usually I only get a couple hundred hits, and that one is at 10,000, which it just astounded me. And I was so happy, and proud of that. So I've had great feedback. There've been some people that have twisted my words and said that I've justified the shootings. And I thought, well, gosh, you maybe didn't comprehend my blog then. Or maybe I didn't articulate it well enough, but that wasn't what I was saying at all. I was saying, precisely what I've described to you, is that we have to get it right. And when we get it wrong, it's a fatal mistake. And and again, it sends ripples through our community of distrust that it's going to take a long time to overcome that.
Mm-hmm. So there you go, Marissa. Thanks for listening, as always. We also are hearing from Sergeant Alfredo Dean.
That guy's in the doghouse with me.
Uh-oh. What happened?
He's I'm just kidding. I love Sergeant Dean. He's the guy that got me in the boxing ring. He's the one that came to me and said, hey, we're doing this charity event, and we're thinking about pitting you against a commander from Elgin, and it's a charity boxing event. And so I heard charity and I thought, I'm in. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I've never boxed before in my life. And so I kind of envisioned giant boxing gloves. And that's not what it was like at all. In fact, I had not met my opponent. And I've got nothing but respect for her, especially after being in the ring. But the actual mantra is true, that everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. Yeah, and it's funny is I'm in that ring, and I that's why I cursed Sergeant Dean, because I told him I'm going to put him on midnights with Tuesdays and Thursdays off, because I still have to get him back for it. But I didn't train as well, so that's on me, because I really did think this was going to be fun, but I reverted to my training while I was in that boxing ring. And our training is, when you're being attacked, you look for cover. Well, I'm here to tell you there's no cover.
Nowhere to go.
In a square boxing ring. So I was actually trying to even hide behind the referee. It was not my finest hour.
Is there video of this?
Probably. What's funny is there is actual video, but I woke up the next day and I couldn't turn my head. I felt like I was in a car accident. Well, then a couple people started sending me the video. And, when your head
you got popped.
When you're a bobblehead, I was like, oh, that's actually why I can't turn my head today. So, yeah. Mm-hmm. It didn't hurt at the time, though, which is odd. It didn't hurt until the following day. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, actually, I believe Sergeant Dean was on our show along with Jesse the Law Torres to talk about the fundraisers. Yes. So Sergeant Dean says, tell Commander Ziman that we are awaiting her return into the boxing ring, and she's saying no way.
Fredo, you know that I'm just going to write a check the next time.
But he does go on to say that you bring a burst of fresh air and opportunities into a sometimes stagnant profession. She is a huge proponent of open communication, which is key in our profession. So he's a fan.
Oh, I'm going to take him off midnights then. That was nice. He's redeemed himself.
Nice save.
Yeah. Well done. Well done, Fredo. Yeah.
So what else is on my... Okay, so we talked about the video. How about the conversation over the past couple of years of people who are concerned that police departments are possibly a little too over-militarized in their tactics and in their weaponry?
Sure. So, we plan for the worst. That's what we do. And so I think that to answer that question, and I can do it in twofold. One of which is we have to be prepared for the worst. And when you think about police officers, you don't always think about them as being the first line of defense, but we are. I mean, look at September 11th. The people on the scene. It wasn't soldiers. They didn't drop in from helicopters. It was police officers. It was firefighters. So we have to be prepared for the worst. And when I think of what the worst is, it's a terrorist attack, something that horrific. We have to have that equipment at the ready. We simply have to. We have an armored tank because God forbid we ever have to use it. We need it. I'd rather say, wow, we have it there, and we're training our SWAT team and the rest of our frontline officers to deal with this in the face should it ever happen. And hopefully we never have to use it, but we have to be prepared. Now, here's what I said earlier about the media, is how sometimes they can be friend or foe. So I sat through a debrief by the chief of St. Louis County. I was fortunate enough to attend a 2-day event in Chicago where they brought everyone together, and a lot of great minds in that room. And he talked about the event and the accusation of being too militarized. So they came out, and we call them the turtle suits, and what he showed us is what the media didn't show. So he had video from a film crew that was actually with them. They were in an armored vehicle, if I'm not mistaken, with some of their officers. Now, a couple things that got bad press was, the body lying in the street for 4 hours plus. Well, when you describe how the evidence text, that's the first thing that we do is we come and we have to, we gather evidence from the scene. These guys are excellent at what they do. They're experts. And they couldn't do it because they were being fired upon. And so it wasn't a safe zone. And so that was part of the reason why it took so long. The media didn't say that. And he said that they'd incurred, thousands of dollars of, I can't even remember how many rounds they took on all of their squads and of their vehicles. And they actually have footage of these officers that were fired upon. And the officer said, "Are you getting all of this?" to the journalist. And the journalist said, "Yep, I'm recording it all." Well, we watched it in that room, but it never made the media. And so that's why, we have to encounter, again, here we are on this force continuum. When we have a conversation and, at the beginning, it's just the command presence. And then, we move up and we're allowed to move up to a level of force in order to protect ourselves or someone else. And one level above, that's it. And that's why, when you go up too far, then it becomes excessive. So when you have people throwing things at you, shooting you, you have to dress in those things that are going to protect you. And so if that's the armored suits or whatever people call them, then we have to meet that threat with that safety measure for us. Now, peaceful protesters are a different story. And a lot of what the media did is they took this story and they just continued on that trajectory. So you saw peaceful protesters, and then they would cut to the video of the officers, looking very militaristic. But it wasn't in the same frame, at least from what I learned in that 2-day debrief of it. And that frustrates me. And that's why I really believe in social media, that we have to be in charge of our own output. And so if the media isn't going to pick up on the realities, they just want to, tell that sensationalized story to fit within the template, then we have to take matters into our own hands. And that's why I support, law enforcement being on Facebook, having a YouTube page, so we can put things out so people see, oh, maybe it wasn't precisely as it seemed. Having said that, I believe that every person has a right to protest, and we've dealt with it in our community with Planned Parenthood. So people have asked me. In fact, you asked me on your show when I called in. You said, "How do you feel about the new marijuana laws?" And I said, it doesn't matter how I feel. How I feel personally about something makes no difference. I'm here to enforce the laws completely objectively. So how I feel about pro-life, pro-choice, how I feel about the legalization of marijuana, doesn't matter. The laws that are enacted, I have to enforce, as does every police officer. So it doesn't matter. So these officers are standing among these protesters who are protesting them, and they have to remain completely neutral. And, and it's, kill the police. And I mean, that's, again, come back to, we're human, we're not robots. That's a really hard thing to do, to be spit at, to have things thrown at you. And again, when you have a profession where the majority are good, they're good. And so that's difficult for me. But peaceful protesters, no, I don't believe that that we need to bring out, all the military garb when we're just dealing with people who are out there raising their voice as their right to do. And I think that we need to support that, all day.
Right, because as you mentioned earlier, presence has a way of affecting a group. And if you show up, not you, but if the police show up to a peaceful protest and they're a little too overly armored, then I could see where that would affect the dynamic in a negative way.
Yes.
It's almost like that would be egging on the group.
Absolutely.
Instead of trying to diffuse it or keep it to a dull roar, I guess.
And this is where respect comes in. This is, what we were talking about on the onset, is that there are some people that say that respect is earned. I take kind of a different position. I think that respect should be given freely. And then, and if we're the first to give it, instead of waiting, if you respect me, then I'll respect you. And then it just becomes a battle of will, and neither are going to respect each other. And so that's been one of the things that I've tried to weave into the tapestry of my career, is that, number one, people are neither all good nor all bad. And I strongly believe that, unless you're dealing with a psychopath that's, completely, evil. But I think that even those who break the law still deserve to be respected. This is the job I have to do. And for the most part, in my career, it's worked out very well for me, by treating someone with human dignity and respect, even if I'm putting handcuffs on them, even if I'm having to write them a ticket, because that's what I'm here to do, is uphold those laws. And so I think that, like you said, it diffuses things. You know what? Transference is what humans do. And when you have that positive impact on people, and so even if I disagree with what you're protesting, if I walk up to you and say, do you need anything? We're here, and this is your right to protest, and we're going to protect you, and your right to do it. I think that transference of humanness is what diffuses situations. And I'll tell you what, the best police officers I know have these so-called soft skills. And I've had a battle with even people in my own profession about how it's soft to have to go out of your way to use your influence to talk to people, and how it's soft to use empathy and compassion. And I totally disagree. I think that that's where true courage comes in, is when you're able to use those characteristics that you have, and build a connection with someone. Again, even if we're on opposite sides, and cops and robbers. And I think that's where policing needs an upgrade. And I teach something called Blue Courage, and it's a bunch of police officers that got together from all over, and we developed this curriculum. And I'm so proud of what we've done, because we go around and we teach police officers about respect, modules, respect and resilience and empathy and compassion. I mean, and that's what I think police are lacking. But the best cops I know, the biggest and baddest cops I know, are the ones that can use those skills of empathy and compassion.
Yeah, I mean, I can, I've never been in that kind of a position, but I can imagine that if you take the same scenario and play it two different ways, just a simple traffic stop where you have to issue a citation. If you're respectful about it, then perhaps that is going to encourage the offender to rethink their ways, and maybe I'm not going to speed anymore.
Yeah.
Whereas if you pull them over and you write them a ticket and you're a jerk about it, then they're going to come away with a very bitter taste in their mouth.
Absolutely.
And that could turn them against you going forward, instead of making them stop and think and say, okay, well, that was kind of stupid what I did.
Absolutely. And I think that's part of it, is that when you look down on people, they feel that. I mean, all anyone truly wants is to be heard, is to feel as though they're valued. And when you're doing something wrong, you still can feel that way. And, and if someone doesn't make you feel terrible about it, but, just calls to your attention. And one of the things that I learned early in my career was from one of my field training officers that said, every traffic stop is an opportunity for you. And, people love firemen. They don't love the police because we're out there enforcing the laws, but someone has to do it, and we're out there and we're the guardians of democracy. And so I've heeded that advice when he said, try to get a thank you out of every person that you pull over. And I thought, well, that's absurd.
That's a tough ask.
It is, but you know what? And I love that Fredo said this, because I feel like that's where police officers don't do a good job, is that it's that communication versus notification. There's a big difference when I notify you of something, but when I actually communicate with you, so when you take that extra time to explain, this is why I'm issuing you a ticket, because you were driving this fast. Do you understand the reason that I have to give you this ticket? It's not because I want to take money out of your pocketbook, but it's because when you drive fast, there's a higher propensity of you to crash your car and to kill someone. And that's why these laws are in place, is because sometimes when people left to their own devices, can be quite reckless. And so, so these laws that we enforce are not just to punish you, but it's to get you to change your behavior and hopefully save your life. It's that simple. But having a conversation like that on a traffic stop changes everything. Then, do you know why I pulled you over? And again, that mirrored sunglasses and attitude that I talk about. So the more police officers can hone their skills and communication, and like I said, they are not soft skills. They are skills that I think are very difficult for people, because we fall into that, I'm wearing a uniform, and it's that contrived power. And I truly believe that anytime you borrow power from your position, whether be your star, your patch, or your title, so that you're really doing people a disservice with that, and the more human you can be, the better. And that is not to say that we don't go hands-on when we have to, because there are bad people out there. Mm-hmm. And there are going to be times, like I said, that it's not going to be pretty, but where a person is resisting and a lawful arrest, where we are going to have to put hands on people. So starting with influence and trying to use communication and empathy, I think actually diffuses the situation instead of, elevates the situation. And so, but if we have to go there, we will. And that's what I mean, being ready. We have to be trained, and we have to be able to do that should it be necessary. But I think, again, spending more time communicating will make it unnecessary.
Mm-hmm. We have just a couple more minutes left in the show. I would like to ask you about one of those stories, maybe something that happened recently that that made you stop and say to yourself, this is why I do this, So maybe it was some kind of an interaction with the public, or I know that you go to a lot of conferences and training sessions and things like that. So just wondering if I could put you on the spot a little bit and ask you to share a story that made you feel extremely proud to be a police officer.
Yeah, well, it's probably a little different than what you might imagine. But as I said, when I was on the street, the proudest moments I had were those little victories, were those just that guy in the backyard. That's the stuff for me. For me, it's not rising through the ranks, although I'm very proud of that. But for me, it's the human connection. It's the stories where you actually change someone's mindset. And that's what I've tried to do with my influence. I've tried to show people that police officers aren't to be painted with a broad brush. So, and it's going to sound as though I'm evading the question, but this is the honest truth, is that the parts where I am most proud is when I see these police officers out there doing things to make those connections. So it's not something that usually happens to me. It's something that I look at and I'm in awe of what they do. And just recently it was is our police officers that actually I wrote a column, and I said, I think that, and this was far before Ferguson and any of the events that have unfolded lately, I asked my police department, could you tell me something that an officer did that you were witness to that was altruistic? Because we always get the bad press, nobody ever takes the time to see what is good. And so I put this out, and it's funny is that not one person told a story about themselves, not one, but they all had a story about someone else. And the stories that came in actually, stopped me. I was truly in awe of it. But we have police officers out there that, one officer went to a burglary call, and it was an elderly couple whose door got kicked in and the board up service wasn't available. And so that officer got off work at 3:00 and went to the hardware store, brought his personal car back, his own tools, boarded up that door so that they were secure in their house. Another officer went to a call, and again, these are told by the people that they were on the call with, went to a call and saw that the kids were sleeping on the floor. They went to their home and they took their own mattresses from their children's rooms and they brought them over to their house. And coats, things like that. The one that touched me more than anything was an officer actually put someone through rehab on his own dime because he saw this person had potential, but he was constantly coming in contact with them on the street, and thought if he could help them get better, that they could be productive members of society. His own dime, he put people through, put this person through rehab. This is why I do what I do, because I love to, now that I'm no longer on the street and making those connections, I feel like I can watch these men and women in blue do those amazing things. And that's the stuff, because as I said, that's what builds up our emotional bank account and really reminds people that, police officers are human beings and they're out there doing really good things. But again, accountability, when you stand with them when they're right, but part with them when they're wrong. And I think that it's just a multitude of all of those things that every day it's the humanness that makes me go, this is it. This human psychology is, and seeing people at their rawest moments, their worst times of their lives, and influencing them enough to change, or, having a police officer, step in and correct something, that's the stuff for me. So it's not really my own stories I like to watch. I like to watch our men and women do that.
Well, I would like to thank you so much for joining me today. The city of Aurora is not a small city. No. It's, as everyone is aware, second largest town in Illinois. And so that's a tall task to maintain peace and order. But I would like to commend you and the rest of the department for taking, a more personal approach. And I'd like to thank you specifically for being so open and honest with us. We do have a closing comment from Rebecca on Facebook saying that she is so grateful that Commander Ziman could co-host. Her voice is definitely needed in our community. So I think there are a lot of people who are very happy to get that inside view that you provide. So keep up the excellent work.
Oh, thank you for having me. Anytime I can brag about the police officers of Aurora, I will happily do so.
Yes, and if you ever need to come back and give us an update, we are always here for you. And make sure that you keep up with Commander Ziman's posts at it's KristenZiman.com is where you can find her blog, and also in the Beacon News. So thank you so much once again, and I'd like to thank everyone for watching and listening and sending in your questions and comments. And we will miss you in the ring, in the boxing ring. But we will make sure we let everybody know when the next session is scheduled.
I'll be a good spectator.
Yes, you'll be there to cheer him on, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Maybe we'll get you in the corner as the as a coach.
Boxing is a lot harder than it looks. That's my takeaway.
I wouldn't even want to attempt.
No.
Yeesh. So we'd also like to thank the friends of our show, Drendel and Jansen's Law Group in Batavia. You can find them at batavialaw.com. And Neighbors Magazines, as well as Downtown Auroran Magazine. You can find her, that would be Marissa Moni. Hi, Marissa. You find her at downtownaurorian.com. And also Bureau Gravity, which is a holistic marketing agency also located in downtown Aurora. You can find them at bureaugravity.com. And you can find us, if you like this show, make sure that you forward it and share it with your friends and family. And you can find us on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all that fun stuff. And hopefully you will have a very happy and safe New Year's. And we will talk to you next year. Thank you.